What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today I'll be showing you this technique called Confetti Jungle. In this video, I'll show you how I set up the material and how to break Redshift assets to create this interesting look. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today. So without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, to start the video today, I'm just going to hop into the Redshift library and enter in skeleton. And with this, I'm just going to pop this up here. And with this, we're just looking primarily for the head portion of the skeleton here. And I'm just going to copy this here. And then I'm just going to go over into our original scene here and paste that in here. And next up, typically what I do is I bring in a Redshift camera just to get a nice perspective. So I'm just going to set up the camera there, and then I will turn that off just because we don't necessarily need it until we hop into the Redshift render view. So to start this out, I'm going to build the material here. And so what I'm going to do is go into Redshift here, select material, and then go down into our car paint section, and then we'll just select this. Now as we get in here, the first thing I'm going to do is just turn down the weight here. And then with this one, I'm going to push up the weight to 1. Then I'm going to put the glossiness to 0.712 here. Then I'll bring down our reflectance just a tad here. And with this, you can always adjust it. I just have a specific parameter that I like when it comes to this material, so I'll just set that to my liking here. But you can always kind of play around with it depending on what you guys kind of see fit. Next up, I'm going to go in here and type in state. So I'll bring that in here. Then I'm going to type in vector, and really what we're looking for is the vector change range here. And then I'm just going to kind of move these off to the side to make some room. Next up is a color correct, so I'll go ahead and select that. And then we're going to bring in a wireframe as well too. Alright, so I'm just going to take this and move this over to the side here. So first, I'm just going to plug in our states to our vector change range here, and then just simply put that into our color correct. And then we're just going to go to our clear coat reflection and go all the way down to color. And then that's going to kind of start out some of that glossiness and color that we're looking for. And then I'm just going to go to the wireframe here and connect it to our car paint. And with this one, we're going to our edge fall off and then color as well. Then I'm just going to increase the wire thickness here all the way to 1. Next up, I'm going into our vector change range here, and then I'm just going to set all of this top row to -1. And again, this is one of those that you can always kind of change it around, so you're just going to get a slightly different look if you change it to -2, or you have it some sort of offset pattern where you have -1, -2, -1. So you can kind of play around with that. But For this one, I'm just going to set it down to all -1s here. And then to start out, I'm going to go to our color correct section, and this is primarily where all the color is going to be driven. And so I'll just go to the hue section here, and then I can type in a specific range that I like, and then it'll pull up the color. And with this as well, if you do change the hue, it is going to change that color as well too. So you can always kind of customize that, and then I'm just going to show you that here later in the video as well too. So primarily with this, the wireframe, color correct, and the vector change, that's primarily what you're going to be playing with to get both similar effects, but also kind of change it to your liking. Depending on the material or assets you're using, you can always kind of change that up. So feel free to kind of play around with it and see what you guys like the most. And then as we kind of pull this up, we do see our pigment color is this purple here, and so you can go in and change that to just kind of a dark black here. Cool, so for the most part, we have our material set up here. So next up, we'll just kind of exit out of this, and then we'll just jump back in this a little bit later when we do play around with a few other colors. So for our skull, I'm just going to delete the color here, and then actually what I'm going to do is just bring in a null, and then I'm just going to type in skull here, and then just take all of these and put this into our null here, and then I'm just going to apply our color to the skull null here. Next up, I'm going to bring a cube here, and primarily with this cube, it's not really needed, but I just bring this in just to kind of have some sort of foundation for my scene here. And then I'm going to bring in a spotlight as well, just to help kind of create some sort of light source. And then I'm just gonna rotate that down 90 degrees, lift it up, and kind of move it over our skull here. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust this quickly, just move the cube over, and then our light as well. Cool, so I'm just going to do a quick save here, and then bring up the Redshift render view and hit play and hop into our camera. So immediately that is the effect that we have. And so we can kind of zoom in here, change it to perspective real quick, and I can kind of rotate around it. So it's kind of a glossy pearlescent look here, and then we do get those wires kind of wrapped around the skull here. We can always increase the look by adding in a subdivision surface. So immediately you can see that our skull has a little bit more segments here, and it looks a little bit more clean, and then you can see the line work as well. So real quick, I'm just going to save it out here. That is pretty much our color for the most part. Next up, we're just going to set up our scene here. So let's hop into that section now. All right, so we have our scene here. So what I'm going to do is type in Redshift here, and then we're just going to scroll down all the way to some of these plant assets here. So I'm just going to import a few of these. And really with this technique, it's a specific way on breaking this Redshift assets, specifically the plants, just because it kind of creates a really cool effect both with our material and our wire as well. So I'm just going to bring in a few plants here, and then I'm just going to kind of bring in the tree just to kind of show you guys what looks it can create with that, and then we'll kind of play around with a few other things too. So let me hop out of this here, and then we're just going to shrink these assets down a little bit more to scale here. Cool, and then I'll just push back this tree. Then I'll just shrink down our plant here. Cool. And then I'll bring this other one over here as well, and then just kind of set it up on our cube here. And then I'm just going to take a quick save here, and then I'm just going to kind of open up these assets here and then bring up the Redshift render view and hit play here. Cool, so we have our assets here. I'm just going to hop into the Redshift camera point of view, and then you can see all of our plants here. So I'm just going to adjust this plant here kind of around our skull. And then real quick too, what I'll do is hop into the Redshift library, and they have a liquid ice, and so I'm just going to bring that in as well, just because that gives some pretty good reflectance. And so I'm just going to go into this asset here, and I'm just going to start to apply some of this color, and I'm just going to alternate between both the ice and the material that we made. So immediately you start to see a lot of these, almost like a crystallized version of our plant. And so you could see all the different colors being reflected, and so it's a pretty different look versus what we had before with our plant. And then of course, as I kind of rotate it, you're going to get a different look as well too. And so you could see some parts of the leaves or the plants that used to be, and then you get a lot of different shapes and then crystallizations as well. And then as I bring in the dome light, you guys can kind of see a full look at that. But really, this shines a lot better when you have specific lights kind of centered towards a certain object. And then of course too, what's nice about this is as you kind of rotate the light or rotate your perspective, the pearlescent aspect of the material is going to change as well too. So you can always get different looks depending on what you're looking for. So next up, I'm just going to do the same thing with this here. Just apply the same material. And then I'm just going to throw in some of this liquid ice here, again, just to help with reflection. I can even throw it down onto the cube here, and it kind of gives a nice reflectance. So it kind of makes a really different looking look, essentially. And then as I zoom in here and rotate the camera, you can see all that really cool looking detail. Cool, and then you could kind of move this around where you have one in the background and one in the foreground here, and then just kind of adjust it. And then you can always kind of rotate these shapes here, just because you don't necessarily have to have them facing forward, because now they're just completely a different entity and not even a plant anymore. And so you can kind of rotate it and kind of play with it how you like. Of course, condensing it down can kind of give you a different look as well too. And then again, I'll just kind of show you more up close of what that looks like. And then there's an additional layer to this as well. So what I'm going to do is just bring in our tool here and then just kind of contain our render view to this specific section here. And then I'm just going to go into our settings here and turn on LUT. And then as I kind of select a few different LUTs, you can see that there are different looks and different color interpretations, and so you can always kind of stretch it out depending on what you guys are really going for here. So okay, so next up I'm going to try this tree out. And so I'm just going to bring in a dome light just so you guys can kind of see the whole thing here. And then again, I'm just going to start to apply some of the material onto the tree here. And so you guys can see that it changes and that ice is reflecting some of our colors here. And then I can always kind of bring this forward, change the lighting here, adjust it. And then depending on the light and also the scale, you can also have a few different effects. We can bring in our original plants here, and it adds in a bit more variety and a bit more of a different textures as well too. And then we can go back into our node editor here for our material, and then I can change the hue here, and by changing the hue I can create a completely different material. And so let me just copy and paste that a few times here, and I'm just going to change this to more of a warm tone here. And then I'm just going to go back into a few of our assets here and just change this color. So immediately you see the green and the blue and some of this gold and orange colors coming in. And so you can even kind of stack that on top as well, depending on what you guys are really looking for. You can always kind of bring in a landscape as well, and what's cool about this landscape is you can always kind of adjust the roughness and the segments as well, and you can apply some of these colors as well too. And it kind of creates a kind of a funky look here. And then as I kind of bring in area lights too, and just kind of adjust it to the scene, it can kind of create something a little different. Mainly with this too, I'm just kind of showing you guys what's really possible and what I've found. Not really going for anything aesthetically pleasing here, but just kind of showing you guys what's possible. So you can always kind of throw in your skull into this area lights. So if you want your skull to be highlighted or a specific object to be highlighted, you can always kind of throw that in as well too. And so none of these other assets are really affected by the light besides your skull. So if you really want the skull to pop out, or whatever your object is to really pop out, you can kind of adjust that there. And then I'll just kind of play around with it a little bit just to kind of see what's kind of possible here. And then we can kind of zoom in to our skull. And then we can kind of reduce it down to just one item here. And then we can bring in a S curve from our grayscale gorilla library to have a nice backdrop. Also too, I haven't tried any other assets besides this, so let me go into the Redshift library here. And select this palm tree just to kind of see what effects we can get here. So I'm just going to turn off everything else besides this palm tree here, and then I'm just going to adjust it to our scene. And then I'm just going to throw in some of these colors onto the palm tree. And you can see a cool cascading effect with our colors here. And then as I kind of play around with the scale and adjust it, you can kind of have this cool looking jungle party theme here with the skull and the tropical leaves here. And then if I just copy and paste that and just adjust some of our leaves here, you can kind of create a cool effect. And then I can bring in some of my old materials here just for a little bit of background noise almost. And then I'm just going to kind of bring in a few different spotlights here just to highlight specific areas. And so you can always kind of play around with this depending on what you guys are kind of into or focusing on here. And of course, going in and changing the material type or changing the wire thickness or just completely removing the wires in general will kind of help you create different looks. In the beginning of this video, I kind of showed you guys a few different renders I made. And so one was this jungle theme. Another one was this confetti blues and purples that I kind of jammed in next to the skull. And then I also did it with a few different flower assets as well and made a darker backdrop and really tried to highlight a lot of the flowers and really create some really cool contrast with that. So with this technique specifically, you can create a lot of really cool things just by controlling the colors, the hue from the material. You can always change again your wire thickness as well. And then there's so much control when it comes to after you render something out, you can always kind of correct specific colors or alter it depending on what you like. So that's pretty much it for this video. Let's hop into the wrap-up section and finish this off. All right, so wrapping up the video here, this was something a little bit different, something that I found just kind of messing around within Cinema 4D. I don't know how much practical use this has, but I did want to kind of show you guys something different and something that was a little over the top. And so I always try and go in on my free time and just kind of play around within Cinema 4D and see if I can kind of create something interesting or just kind of completely break it in general. And so I think that is a really cool way of both kind of learning the program and then also discovering different either settings or tools that you may not kind of run into while doing your normal line of work. Or, you know, sometimes if you're really good at something, you tend to kind of stick within that area. So sometimes I will do stuff where I just kind of play around and try out different settings to create a few different looks here. And so, but other than that, that was pretty much it today. Let me know what you guys think of this. I think it's kind of cool and a little fun as well too. I'm sure you can kind of create some really cool abstract stuff. I think with this, if there is any practical use to it, I'm sure you can find ways to kind of create this either this like fantasy background or even just like a really kind of abstract looking render. And so maybe this is probably not going to be in your foreground, but you could probably utilize this in your background to kind of create a variety or just like some sort of color pop in general. But again, just wanted to show you guys what I was playing around with on my off time. But just like that, that's the end of the video. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.